So, hello guys, in today's video we are going to discuss about Redux. So in this video we are basically learn that what the Redux is, where we can use Redux, why we have to use Redux, means what kind of problem Redux is solving. Okay, and after that we will practically see that how we can use Redux in our application. So basically what the Redux is. So Redux is a kind of pattern, or you can say Redux is a library, which is the basic essence behind Redux is for managing and updating application state. Means let's suppose you are creating app something like Instagram or Facebook. So for creating that app, you have to store a lot of data. You have to write a lot of logic there. Okay. So what Redux will do, Redux will create separate pages, or you can say separate you can say a separate block for your logic. Means there is, let's suppose there is one page. Okay, just visualize it. One page. Okay, now you have to write some logic. You have to store some data. You have to do some other things. So these are some few things that you want to do. Now let's suppose you are creating Instagram. So for creating that Instagram, you have to write a lot of logic. So what Redux will do, Redux will create one different file, says let's suppose store.js. In that file you just store only things related to information, means all the data, all the information of the application, of your application, will store in that file. Another file is action.js. In action.js, you will write all the action that you are giving to your user, means what kind of action your user, your customer can do with your website, with your application. So you will write all the action there. Then one other file, reducer. What reducer will do, reducer will uh, collect all the logics that how we are going to do that action. Means action will say, okay, this action we have to do. Reducer will say how to do that thing. Whatever action we want to do, how we can do that thing. So in reducer we basically write a logics that okay, when this thing will happen, so we have to update this thing in this manner. So what reducer is doing, reducer is with very effectively and very efficiently just managing your all complex things. Because when apps became more larger and larger, so at that time developer found very difficult to manage all those things. So for that Redux will come. Means there are other libraries, other things are also, but Redux is the best one. So this is the whole what the Redux is. We can go in definition as well. So you can see that Redux is a pattern and library for managing and updating application state using events called action. Okay, so Redux is a kind of pattern, and it's a library also for managing our application state. Application state means that how we want to update our things. For example, right now we are in this page, we are in a Redux documentation page. Now we want to change something, so we are clicking on this. So you can see now the state of page has been changed. So this is what the state is, that we are controlling the changing, we are controlling the movement, updation, these kind of things. So this is what the state is. So Redux help us to manage that state in a very efficient way. So when we have to use the Redux, so basically when you are writing very complex logics, means when your logic to update that state may be complex. Okay, when you are working on some large application, at that time you have to use this thing. So it will give you a very great benefit as well. So these are some use cases that at what time you can use Redux. Means for creating counter, for creating to do, you can use Redux, but it's not necessary. Means Redux basically used for large application where things are so much, where the logic you have to write is so much. So at that time you have to use Redux. So now the thing comes that how we are going to use Redux. Now we understand that what the Redux is. Redux is library for managing our application state or updating our application state. Okay. When we use it, when our application is so big, when the logic is so complex, at that time we can use Redux. So now you understand this thing, that what the Redux is, when we have to use it. Now we will see that how we can start using Redux. So this is our fresh React app, and now I'm just creating one component, let's say Redux. Inside this, I will write all the things related to Redux. So first thing I will create is a store file, store.js. Now, so the first thing you have to do is to first install two things. What those things are? npm I. One is Redux. Second one is uh, React Redux. So it will take some time. Okay, so yeah, it's done. So you just have to install two dependency. First one is Redux and second one is React Redux, and you are ready to use Redux. Now, the first thing is to create a store where we are going to store all the data of our application. Okay, so Redux is providing us this store as well. So right, because we have to use this store other place as well, so we have to export it. So the name is store. The name of the store that Redux provide is legacy create store. You can see it's coming from where? Redux. Just click on it. Okay, so it will legacy create store from Redux. You can change the name also. How? By writing as, you are saying that legacy create store as create store. Just 1 minute. Yeah, so Redux will give us legacy create store. The name of the function that Redux provides us is legacy create store, and it will create a store for us. So you can change the name, means the name is so big, legacy create store. So while writing this, you can just write as create store. So instead of writing here legacy create store, you just simply write create store. Okay, and it will work. So this create store will take two things. First is reducer, and second thing is initial state. Reducer and initial state. Now, so before giving some parameter argument to it, we will create some other files as well. Reducer.js. Now we have to export this as well. So we have to write, and the name is reducer. I'm using callback function here. You can use whatever you want to. And after that, what you it will also take two things. First is state means store, and second thing is action, means what action we want to do. Okay, so now here we have to give reducer, so it will export reducer from here. And the other thing is initial state. Okay, and let's suppose in initial state there is one counter and one to do empty array. Now give reducer and initial state to the create store. So it will create a store for you. So the store, you have created your store. Now the store work is done. Now what you have to do, you have to go to the reducer. Reducer, it will take state and action. And inside the state and action, you have to write your logic. And how we write our logic? By using switch and case means. Here are it's come action dot type, which type of action you want to do. So action dot type will tell you that this type of action we want to do, and then it will check for every case that okay, in this case we are doing that type or not. So it will, yeah, I will, let's suppose the first case is the type is increment. We have to increment our counter. So for incrementing our counter, what we have to do? First, we have to spread our initial state, and then we have to change the counter. So write state dot counter plus action dot payload. I will explain you every single thing. Then default is return state. Okay. So yeah, now we have created our store. Okay, we have created our reducer as well. Now what we have to do, we have to go in app.js. I have route one counter here. I have created two button, one for increment and second for decrement. Now how you are going to use the information which is in reducer, means this store is right now in Redux. Okay, Redux know about this thing, but React don't know about this thing. React don't know what the counter is. React don't know what this to do is. So we have to tell our React, our main app, that this is something which we have. So how you can say that? So we have created two button, increment, decrement. Now what I have told you, that only Redux have that store right now, means the store that we have created. Redux, React don't know about this store right now. So you have to tell React that this is store and you have to use this store wherever you want to. So how you are going to tell this? You have to go in index.js. There is one component provider provided by React Redux. You can see that provider coming from where? React Redux. Just wrap up your this, just wrap your whole app with the provider component. Okay. In provider component, they will give us one store prop, and in this store we have to pass our store, the store that we have created. So we have to just import that store. Okay. Okay, so it's coming store and we had just passed. Now our React application also know about that. Okay, this is one store where we have what? Two things, counter and to-do list, which is right now empty. So now how to use that counter? We can't directly say that we use counter. You just can't say this. It will throw you an error because it don't know right now. So for that, there is one thing called use selector. Okay. Sorry. Use selector which come from React Redux. So we are okay. So what will happen? We have to use selector. Okay. In use selector, we have to give one callback function. Now I will explain you what the use selector is. First, we have to import this use selector from React Redux. Okay. Now we have to use one more thing called use dispatch, and that thing also come from React Redux. So now first we will explain, first we will understand what the use selector is. Now let's suppose we have to use our store which is in Redux right now. We have to use that store in our React application. Okay. So for that, React Redux provide us one hook called use selector, which help us to take that data, to take that data from the store. For example, we are right now creating a counter, so we will only take counter only. Now what reuse selector will do, now if we don't write anything inside it, we just directly write store. Okay, we just if simply write store. Okay, because it's not coming from there. Okay, and if you write just state, so what will happen? Let me do a console. Now just run this npm start. It will take some time, but yeah. So we are it's taking a little bit time. Yeah, so you can so say that what store is, what counter is not defined, is undefined. App.js. Okay, so that's showing this thing. So for a while, just remove this counter 0 and just inspect it. You can now see that use selector will take one callback function. Inside that callback function, what it will taking, it's taking store as a parameter. And this store is coming from where? From here. From here, this store is coming. And in app, so use selector, we use selector hook for taking a particular, for taking the store information to for using that information in our React app. So what we are saying is store and returning it store, and that store is getting stored in this state. And once we are doing the state, so you can see now all the data is coming, that we have only two things, counter and to do. But if we just do store dot counter, so it will just only give us counter. You can see now it's only giving 0, but it's giving 0 only, because state is now only counter and counter is right now 0. So why it's need one callback function? So there is one simple logic behind it, that we have a store. Let's suppose right now we have only two things inside our store. But if we create some big application, so inside that store there are lot of things. There are hundred and thousand of different information are there. So we don't want all the information right here. So for that, what we are saying, we are calling one callback, and to callback we are saying from store we only want this counter function. We only want this counter thing, this counter information, and this callback is just returning that information to use selector, that okay, you want only counter, okay, take it. Then this use selector will give that counter to this state, and this const state will means this variable will store that counter, and we can just easily use state here. Now you can give whatever name you want to. Let's suppose I'm giving counter. You can also have to change here counter. Now you can say it will still work. It is still working. It's just showing 0. So okay. But now we use that, how we can use our store information in our React application. We can use wherever we want to. Okay. But still our increment and decrement button are not working, because we have not said anything to it. So for that, what we have to say? We have to say on click. So on click, what we want, we have used one more thing, one more hook called use dispatch. This also comes from React Redux. Now, use dispatch has one thing called dispatch. Okay, invoke this dispatch. So once you invoke this dispatch, you will use this dispatch. So this dispatch will come, and you have to use this dispatch to invoke action, to say what, to say reducer where we are writing our logic. Okay, we are writing our logic in reducer. So what we are saying that on click, we are calling this dispatch function. This dispatch function is coming from React Redux. So this use dispatch will inform Redux that this is some action that user want to do. So inside this dispatch, you have to give a action. We call this object a action. In action, we have to give two things. First is type, and type is increment. We want to do increment because this is the counter. So we want to, and second one is payload. Payload will tell, okay, you want to increment the counter by how much? We are saying by 1. Okay, let's suppose that. Now same thing will happen with decrement also. Just the only thing change is type, because we don't want to increment. We want to what? We want to decrement. Okay, by 1. Okay. So now this dispatch will take this information, this whole information, which we called action. This action will go to the use dispatch. Use dispatch will inform reducer, okay, that this is something which is happening, because this reducer is sending this dispatch function. Okay, this dispatch function is coming from where? From reducer. It's connected with reducer, that whenever dispatch will call, this reducer will get informed, and this whole type, this whole action, this all information will go to the reducer. And what will happen? It will come here. It will say, okay, it will coming action. What I'm saying action. So what the action is? Action is this type and payload. So I am saying to reducer that action dot type, which is right now increment. So it will say, okay, this is the case where we have to go. So it will see, okay, this is the case for increment. So what we have to do? We don't have to change anything. So dot state. We only have to change what? Counter. So we are creating new counter. State dot counter means it will take the previous value and it will add action dot payload, a new value to it. Payload is what? 1. So instead of writing action dot payload, action dot type, you can just do object destructuring here itself. You just write type and payload, and you can now directly able to use that thing. You don't have to write action dot type, action dot payload. You just have to write type and payload. That's it. Now if you just go and try to click onto it, so right now it's not working. Maybe we have missed something. You have to take care of that. This increment spelling is exactly same as this increment spelling. Okay, so what's happening? This we are clicking on increment, so it's going to dispatch. Dispatch will going to here. It will coming here. We have to create one more case for that, for decrement. Okay. We are missing something. Why this such okay? Yes. So we have to decrement this thing. So here we are doing plus payload, but here we will do minus payload. Okay. So let's increment. You can see that it's incrementing by 1. Let's click on decrement. It's decrementing by 1. So now let's understand the flow, that how this Redux is working. First thing what we have done, we have create one store. What initial state that okay, in our store, this is right now here is only 2 things, counter and to do. After that, we are using Redux legacy create store function. Okay, so what it's doing, we are using this create store and then passing 2 argument to it. One is reducer Second is initial state, that right now we have only this thing, and second is reducer. And what reducer is carrying with itself, the whole logic, that how we have to update, how we have to change the things, or how we have to change the information of our store. And then when what we have to do, we have to use provider component, because provider component help React to know that okay, this is a store and you have to use this store in the React app, so that you can now use your use Redux store anywhere in your application. But this is the main step, don't forget this, because if you don't do this, so app is not able to understand that what the store is, because React don't know about the Redux store. So for that we have to write this, use this provider component. Once you use it, there are two more hooks: use selector, use dispatch, which Redux is providing to us. Redux use dispatch is used for calling an action. Okay, calling an action. We are informing informing the reducer that okay, some action has to be taken place. The user want to do something. So dispatch will inform reducer about that thing. And dispatch will take one thing called action. And action have two things: type and payload. That what type of action you want to do. We want to increment the thing, and this is what payload, the information that we have to increment it by 1. If you just write 2 here, so it will increment the counter by 2. Now you can see 4, 6, but it will decrement by 1 only, because right now in decrement the payload is 1, means we have to decrement it by 1. So dispatch is taking the whole action. This action is going to the reducer. Once you click on this button, this dispatch function will get invoked. It's taking the action type increment payload 2. Then it's going to the reducer. It's checking for okay. We are checking for increment. So it will see that okay, this is the case for increment. So it will go here in this line. It will see that okay, we don't have to change any, we don't have to change other thing. We just only have to change this counter. So what we are doing, we are taking the counter value, counter previous counter value, and just plus doing plus 1 plus 2 to it. Payload is what? Payload value is 2. So we are just adding 2 to our counter value, and this will return this thing to the store, and then the store will get updated, and this store is used by use selector here, and we are using counter here, and this counter will get updated. So this is the flow of the whole Redux. I hope that you guys understand that how this Redux is flowing. Thank you so much for watching this video.